Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars. Hello there, this is Dave and you're listening to What Does Star Wars Mean to You, the show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars. From industry insiders to indie artists, from mega collectors to obsessive mythologists, to find out how Star Wars impacted their life. Here's the thing, there's a lot of ways to look at Star Wars and it's all from a certain point of view, and that point of view is yours. Now, I've always loved hearing people's passionate points of view on Star Wars because, for me, it reveals new ways of looking at the franchise. Also, let's just face it, it's fun to talk Star Wars. This is episode 20, now let's talk some Star Wars. Today, my guest is a content creator that is everywhere. He's host of the Scarif Podcast, which is part of the Red5 Network, and is in their words, nerds discussing nerd stuff. You can find it live on YouTube every Saturday or anywhere you listen to podcasts. They cover Star Wars, superheroes, Star Trek, everything under the geek umbrella. Let's give a warm hello there to Ro.
Hello there. How's it going, David? Thanks for having me on. This is going to be so much fun, and thank you for that warm introduction.
Of course. Thank you. First of all, you're host of the Scarif Podcast. And before I forget, congratulations on 4 years. I think it was just your four-year anniversary. Am I correct?
Yes, I think that was in April. And yes, we started, my original co-host, Brad, and I started the show at the tail end of Star Wars Celebration back in April when it came here to Chicago. And yeah, it's been 4 years. I mean, time flies when you're having fun, as they say. I'm still waiting for the fun part. No, I'm just kidding. It's been a blast.
It's pretty amazing to do week to week, 4 years worth of shows, over 150 shows. Was it Star Wars that inspired you to start the show? I mean, obviously the Scarif Podcast, the title says Star Wars.
Sure.
But you talk about a lot of different things.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. We started with Star Wars. And I always wanted to do a Star Wars podcast, but drunk, because I think
Yes.
I feel like I could talk about Star Wars, especially after a couple of glasses of red wine, till I'm red in the face myself. But I think that would end up to be a little too obnoxious. So I kind of tailed it down there. But yeah, we started talking about Star Wars, obviously living in Chicago and having Star Wars Celebration here back in 2019. And, I went out with a microphone and a recorder, and I went to, ask people some questions, why they like Star Wars. What is it about that franchise that keeps them coming back? When they first got involved in Star Wars, all the cool questions that a lot of nerds like to talk to each other about, especially on each other's podcasts.
Yes. Ironically, here we are talking about what does Star Wars mean to you?
Absolutely.
So I guess it's a little bit of a role reversal here. Let's start off with the 5 for the Force, which is a standard set of 5 questions I ask all my guests, and it is just to get kind of your franchise baseline.
Excellent.
First question, which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
The Empire Strikes Back. And I was gonna say, not to sound cliche, but come on, you can't say any other movie with a straight face. It's The Empire Strikes Back.
It is. It's a strong movie unto itself, and then it is a movie that ups the mythology of Star Wars by 1,000%.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of good nuggets in that movie.
Yeah. This one requires a 1d6, 5. There's so much to cover on Star Wars that I had to find a way to shortcut it. What is your favorite alien species of Star Wars?
Oh man, my favorite alien species of Star Wars. That's a great question. There's so many throughout. I mean, I grew up with just the original trilogy, and after a while, then then in the '90s you got the prequel trilogy.
Yes.
What alien species do I like? They're so inventive, and then obviously harkening back to the original trilogy and my first experience in Star Wars, I was just so blown away at the work that was done in the cantina during that first movie. I mean, it really was kind of like a kid in a candy store. There were different aliens and different creatures in every nook and cranny. And the way they edited that sequence together, the introduction, it really gave you a feel. It gave you a good look around the environment to see the rich texture of alien life form. And I think, that really set the stage for what this galaxy, far, far away was going to be all about. It wasn't only, shiny spacesuits traveling in a ship. There's a lot more there. And the fact that there was so many aliens, I think really it enriches the tapestry of storytelling. I am rambling, but my favorite alien life form, I don't know, man.
I don't call it rambling. I call it vamping. You're just buying yourself some time until you're like Hammerhead.
Yeah. Trandoshans.
Yes.
I don't, you know what? I'm not sure if I have an actual favorite. I mean, I have favorite characters and favorite stuff, and obviously we're if you see my background, I mean I'm very Imperial centric. I've got Darth Vader behind me, so that would be my favorite character. But as far as favorite alien species, man, I couldn't tell you. Yeah, sure, let's go with Hammerhead.
Well, I do think that the cantina is a pretty good answer because it really is that Star Wars melting pot of everything you're about to see. It's almost like through the looking glass. You go into that cantina and you're like, oh, this is a different world.
Right. And, obviously Ben Kenobi says you've taken your first step into a larger world. And I think that's as a 7-year-old kid, that's what you feel like.
Yeah. So question number 3, what is your favorite line to quote?
Oh, as a Star Wars fan, I feel like we all have different answers to that question. Mm-hmm. And in our day to day, I'm sure somebody asks us a question and we answer it using a Star Wars line. And I know it annoys my wife. I'm sure it annoys some non-Star Wars fans, friends of mine. But it is
wait, you have non-Star Wars friends?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's funny. My wife has seen the movie once, but it's not in her DNA, and she's not really into sci-fi. But that's another podcast. The funny thing about that is we always, like I said, we always answer in Star Wars lines, and I actually call it Star Wars Tourette's, especially in emails or if I'm communicating with a colleague at work, I'll end it with a quote and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's my Star Wars Tourette's." But for the most part, they they get it gets the information across. So that's that's the funny thing. Since Darth Vader is one of my favorite characters, I like to quote him a lot. It not only instills fear, but I feel like it usually ends up in getting the results that I want.
So is there one line in particular that you use a lot?
Yes. And I think, and it's an easy line, but I think I use impressive, most impressive for a lot of things that that are asked of me. Hey honey, I made you dinner. Impressive, most impressive. I mean, whatever, the kid, hey, I finished my trigonometry. Impressive, most impressive. So the list goes on.
Do you also use it as a rejoinder when someone goes, "Oh, that's impressive," and then you just follow up with "most impressive"?
Yes. I can hear myself doing that. Yeah, for sure.
Can you do any Star Wars impressions and impersonations?
Not well. I mean, I think we all try, doing our best Yoda.
Yeah.
Talking backwards and obviously Vader. It's funny because when if I wake up groggy or right before coffee, I tend to sound like a really good Darth Vader. I'll just add the breathing, but like that early morning, the first cup of coffee before that time, it's really fun to play with voices. You're just waking up, you're groggy. I do a really good rough around the edges Saw Gerrera.
Oh wow!
That's I from time to time I'll just sit on the phone and record myself doing silly lines and then making up little stories in my head. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's spectacular. I love it. We could be fast friends.
Oh, hold on a second. Here it is. Here it is. It's on my phone.
Let's
see if you can.
Saw Gerrera. I thought I'd actually meet you. Well, what an unexpected surprise. It seems you've been busy with your little rebel cell.
Goofy things like that.
I am not using the functions on my phone enough. That's what I'm learning.
Yes, I got all sorts of things in there.
So my final question, besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content? This could be a TV show, a comic book, a novel, a video game, a board game.
I really enjoy Star Wars animation, obviously from the Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, even Visions. I think especially Visions really, the first season was great. The second season I enjoyed a hell of a lot more. There were just some really great stories in that series that were really kind of outside of the normal, your normal Star Wars fare.
Yeah.
The stories are they're not canon, but the studios that took upon themselves to create these little mini movies, they did a spectacular job, especially season 2. Like I said, there are some really great stories in season 2, some amazing visuals. And even in the short time that we see some of these characters in that second season of Visions, I want more. It's really, really great. It's, I like when Star Wars stories in any medium, I love it when they don't get dumbed down. I know it's kids watching, but I think a story is a story is a story. And obviously, as long as it's good, I think any age can follow it. And I think, the Clone Wars and obviously Rebels did the same thing. And I know when the animated shows started, you can tell that they were kind of written for a younger audience. But I think as the audience grew, the show did as well. And I think that's great it's a great way for the audience to experience a story like that.
Yeah. It's very, very much like what Harry Potter did, which was grow with the audience as it went and got darker and darker. Yeah. And you see that in Rebels as well. They kind of like started a little softer. And then by season 2, it was... they were war-torn, they were injured, they were tired,
suffering, and confused, conflicted. Yeah, I mean, it's all the emotions that you feel when you are growing up and trying to find yourself and going through a lot of life lessons. I think it's a great way to kind of teach those things in a way that entertains you as well.
Absolutely.
Cinema Craptaculous is your podcast destination for all things movies, good and bad, streaming series, good and bad, and pop culture, good, bad, and the ugly. You get a totally different show every week, such as People Also Watched with Adam, Dave, and Tara. They're 3 industry insiders who always find the hilarity in the big-budget feature and the lesser-known feature you may have missed. There is, of course, the Expanded Universe. This is your place to geek out. John, Doc, and S'more are your geek experts to talk about what's going on in the world of streaming series, movies, superheroes, pretty much any showbiz geek topic, they're going to talk about it. And, of course, there's the show that started it all, Cinema Craptaculous, with Stephanie, John, and Dave. You don't even need to have seen the movies these guys talk about to have a good time. So what are you waiting for? Go and subscribe to Cinema Craptaculous wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
So let's go back to what introduced you to Star Wars. I'm kind of assuming that it was Star Wars: A New Hope, but
it was Star Wars before it was a new.
Yeah.
Let's not get technical, I guess, but yes.
But it was Star Wars, the original, that got you in the door. Can you tell me about that journey of the first time you saw it and your experience in seeing it?
Yeah, again, not to sound cliche, but this really happened to me, going into the theater as a kid with my mom, from the ending of the crawl at the beginning of the movie. And once you saw the Star Destroyer go overhead, that was it for me. I realized that this is not your usual science fiction, and not that I had watched a lot of science fiction when I was, before Star Wars. I watched movies and stuff like that. And I remember watching, television. But as far as science fiction and visuals, I mean, my wife still makes fun of me because I feel like Star Wars is a documentary. It's not like a movie. Like it actually happened.
Yeah.
The fact that George Lucas and his ILM created this world, this universe out of nothing, is really what got me interested in the craft of filmmaking and editing and graphics and camera work, and it really guided my my career decisions in a way that you'll hear a lot of people say that with both Star Wars and Star Trek. It's the franchises are similar to some degree, especially when it comes to inspiration and why people love it. But yeah, I mean, for me, again, it wasn't, even at an early age, it wasn't really about the spaceships and the adventure and the laser swords and the creatures and stuff like that, although that was a very big influence on me. But as a kid, I was really curious as to how did they create that? How did they put all of this on film? It doesn't exist, but it does. So I was very intrigued. I remember that late that summer, I tried to read as many books, buy as many magazines of behind the scenes of ILM, working on Star Wars, and interviews with George Lucas and the producers and the actors. So I tried to absorb as much as I could, because I was so interested in not only just the movie as an entertainment spectacle, but really the art and craft of filmmaking, the way that George Lucas and Industrial Light and Magic created this. So that really kind of opened the door, I think, to my soul.
Yeah.
Because it really did speak to me on a completely different level. I know a lot of people watch movies and they're like, oh, that was a cool movie. But for me, I think because of Star Wars, I watch a movie and I try to watch it on many different levels. Obviously you get the first viewing where you absorb it, but then you go into like, why did for me at least, why did the director put the camera here? And what are we hearing? And how did the editor decide to make this cut or go to a wide shot and this and that? What is the filmmaker communicating to you through these images? And I think again, at an early age, 7 years old, I was thinking about all these things. Other than just the Wookiees and the spaceships and the X-Wings and the TIE fighters.
So has any other movie, or did Empire Strikes Back hit you in the same way? Did it speak to you in the same way, or was there a kind of different experience when seeing Empire Strikes Back?
Wow, that's a great question, because I think for me, and I guess a lot of fans my age that grew up with the original trilogy, I think the original trilogy is almost like the litmus test when it comes to experiencing everything else after the original trilogy. I feel like The Empire Strikes Back was a continuation of the experience I had in 1977, and more so I will include Return of the Jedi. I think if I would be pressed hard, I think I would say that Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi work as one film, one long movie that really encompasses that. It encompasses the wonder and the magic that helped launch, I guess, a generation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I felt different when I watched The Empire Strikes Back, because like I said, I think it was a continuation of that original feeling. Empire Strikes Back to me is probably my favorite movie, of all time, not just science fiction and fantasy, but just out of anything, for many reasons. But the biggest reason obviously is because we get to see more of the story of what Star Wars started.
Now, you got into kind of the filmmaking aspects of Star Wars, but I also see you have a lot of action figures. I can see Chewbacca, R2-D2, C-3PO. Were you big into the toys? Did you collect all the ships? Were there different ways of interacting with the franchise back in the 80s that were particularly favorites of yours?
So that's a great question. And I think it comes down to, why do we collect? As fans, what is it about whatever franchise we enjoy? What is it that makes us want to go out into the store, spend some money, and display the stuff, behind us? Especially as content creators, what is it that gives us that joy, or why? I think every collector's story is different, but yes, for me, I think it was a way to connect with the franchise. It was also a way to keep those feelings alive. When I sit here and I take a look at everything that I have collected, since 1978, I feel a sense of freedom. I feel a sense of accomplishment. And I feel a sense of almost safety, because we're connected to this thing that is, it's larger than life. It's Star Wars. Yeah. Who on the planet does not know what Star Wars is? But I think, when we collect, I think it's an attempt to really reconnect with our youth and maintain that lifeline that we had to the experience that brought us into the franchise to begin with.
Absolutely. And also, I was talking to J.C. Reifenberg a while back about this. He's an avid collector. And one of the things he was telling about is how each piece within his collection kind of holds a memory of getting that piece. Do you find that true?
Yes, absolutely. I from time to time, when we talk about collectibles, there's one piece that I always go back to and I tell stories about. There's a Darth Vader, a two-piece Rydell Darth Vader helmet that was signed and personalized by David Prowse when he used to do, tours. I met him here in Chicago. And I had some comic books in a yellow plastic bag, and I had that helmet. After he signed it, I put it down on the floor at the convention hall in front of his table, because I was still talking to him. And, I shook his hand and I said, thank you very much. Great meeting you. May the force be with you. Yeah. So, and then I walked away. A couple of minutes later, I realized, where the hell's my bag? I was shitting bricks, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
I ran back to the table. And I'm looking, and my yellow bag was still sitting right in front of his desk, on the floor on the public side, which I'm amazed that nobody just picked it up and grabbed it. But yeah, I mean, stories like that, I think every piece, like, what mood were you in when you bought this Stormtrooper, or what friends were you with when you went to the Smithsonian to pick up this lightsaber? So it is. They are, again, collections and collectibles are all connected to certain memories. And it's, again, using that line that Obi-Wan says, it's our first step into a larger world.
Yeah. Now, how did you survive in the late 80s, early 90s? It's considered the dark times.
Yes.
Because this is when there's very little Star Wars content out there. How did you make it through the dark times?
And this was actually before I remember getting really excited because Lucasfilm had released Shadows of the Empire. And that was almost I feel like it was an experiment. It was like, should we release a movie? Let's see what happens if we do release a movie, except there will be no movie. It was the comic book. It was the novel. It was the game. It was the soundtrack. It was everything but the movie, which was fantastic. But even before that, I think, the 90s, especially on television, was replete with the other Star franchise. Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think my one of my friends, Comics and Cosmetics, Danny always says that we are nerds of multiple denominations. And I think that that pretty much counts. I love Star Trek. I actually tomorrow, as of we're recording June 28th. So on the 29th, I'm dropping, we did an episode, our favorite top 3 original series Star Trek episodes. So yeah, we dive, we dive into the Gamma Quadrant every so often and go past the neutral zone, past the galaxy far, far away.
So Star Trek kind of helped you bridge that, as well as Shadows of the Empire. First of all, let's talk about the re-release, the special editions.
Okay.
It sounds like the original trilogy was very, like, you studied them, you knew them, you probably had them on VHS, watched them 1,000 times. What was your reaction to seeing the special editions?
I am a big proponent of technology. As I mentioned, I studied everything that I could about ILM and the work that was done putting these movies together. So, I liked the fact that George Lucas liked to push the envelope from a technological standpoint. I remember watching the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and realizing that this must be almost a training ground for Lucasfilm and ILM, because he wanted to do a Star Wars series on the small screen, before Disney Plus did it, before they did it in recent times. And he wanted to be able to produce, cinematic style television shows, but on a budget that wouldn't break the bank every time he shot something. So this was kind of a training ground for him. So as far as the special editions went, I was super ecstatic. I loved, for the most part, I loved the work that was done in the special editions. Obviously, I noticed the differences between one versus the other. And I realized that, George wanted to do this. And I don't think it was, a lot of people say, oh, it was just a marketing gimmick and he wanted to, squeeze more money out of it. And if that were true, I still wouldn't really care, because these are his films. He felt like he never really got to a point where he was satisfied with the special effects. And damn it, kudos to him to be able to, open up his checkbook and write his own check and say, you know what, let's finish this up. And I'm fine with that. Some of the changes that were made were great. I think one of my favorite ones was the approach to Cloud City and all the stuff that was done on Cloud City for the Empire Strikes Back special editions. I think they expanded a lot of those scenes beautifully. It looks amazing, amazing, amazing. Little things that I didn't like, when R2 was hiding from Obi-Wan on Tatooine, they put a digital rock in front of him, which really wasn't necessary. I don't know why they did that. But some of the Tatooine extended stuff was really great. And I think you can kind of tell how some of that stuff was changed. But I think overall, I am happy that the special editions exist. I know a lot of people aren't, because a lot of people, we recently had Return of the Jedi go back in the theaters for its 40th anniversary. And a lot of people were asking, well, which version is it? And unfortunately, I don't think that the original versions exist anymore in any capacity, unless you have your old VHSs and laser discs, then lucky us.
Yeah. Now, there was Young Indiana Jones was kind of a dry run of production experiment. The special editions was kind of a experiment in production and CGI. And now comes the prequel trilogy. Has your opinion of the prequel trilogy evolved or changed since you saw it back in 99? And in what way?
I don't think, if I like something or if I don't like it to varying degrees, it doesn't really sway to an extreme one way or another. I think I'm not a big fan of the sequel trilogy, especially the middle film. And I remember talking with some friends and saying, in 10 years, you might like The Last Jedi a little more. And one, I punched him in the face. And two, I said, probably not. But I went to Los Angeles to see episode 1. I spent 2 nights outside the Grauman's Chinese Theater with the rest of the fans. There was a really large group of fans that waited in line, and it was so much fun. I think the experience of having done that really enriches my experience of episode 1 to begin with. I do remember leaving the theater and saying to myself, oh, wow, there's a fart joke in Star Wars now after episode 1. I do remember all the hate that was floating around the media because of, there was even a song called George Lucas raped my childhood or something like that. So yeah, there was a lot of hate for it. I didn't hate it to that degree. I think I probably accepted it more than I liked it. Although, what can you say about that? The last half of the Phantom Menace, Darth Maul's fight with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. I think that was, and it still, I think, remains one of the best lightsaber choreography to date, even in the newer films. I still don't think, and I know there's a lot of Star Wars out here, but I still think that is the king of choreography. Kudos to Nick Gillard.
Yeah, that moment is a capper to the film. I mean, it's just what a rush of a way to end a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
You brought up the sequel trilogy, and there's something I've been thinking about a lot, and it's speculation and expectation, and that going into a movie or a TV show with those two things kind of firmed up, because I think in the internet world today, it's very easy to get caught up into speculation and then have that turn into an expectation and then be disappointed when it doesn't show up. Do you feel like your expectations affected any of the prequel or sequel trilogy experience?
That is a great question, and I see this often. I see discussions about this a lot. For me personally, I don't feel that my expectations will be a factor in me enjoying or not enjoying something. I can expect a certain storyline to play out, but if it doesn't, okay, it doesn't. I think what drives my disappointment is if I get taken out of a story because of poor writing or character motivation that isn't true to that character, something that just, in the visual effects world, there's a thing where, when a VFX artist creates a digital face, there's it might not look, you might think that it doesn't look right, but you don't know what it is. And that's called the uncanny valley effect. So when it comes to expectations and what to expect when you go into a movie, I mean, I think everybody has expectations when you go into a movie. When you go into McDonald's, you expect to buy a burger. You don't expect to buy, a nice steak. So there are expectations that we take with us. It's what we do with those expectations that result in whether we are disappointed or not. You can be disappointed that the story didn't play out the way you thought it would, but you also have to kind of analyze it. Well, were my expectations realistic, or were the story elements that they decided to play out outside of my expectations, were they reasonable? And if they were, then okay, cool. That was another take. But if they weren't, then I think that, coupled with my expectations, really takes me out of it. Because like I said, I think the expectation of a character doing something because this character, you've grown up with this character has meant a lot to you throughout the decades, and then all of a sudden they are where they are for God knows what reason. Then you have to kind of question yourself, like, what is going on here in the bigger scheme of things? Yeah. So that's, I think that, it's a great question, because I do see it a lot. It's like, well, you didn't like The Last Jedi because you expected, Luke to come out, blazing. I'm like, not really. That's not really why I didn't like The Last Jedi. I think if you ask 100 people, you'll probably get 100 answers, 100 different answers. It is a great question. And I think everybody deals with expectations versus disappointment in a unique way. And I think it depends on their definition or their trajectory of how they deal with the end results of whatever it is they're watching.
Yes. And this is why I was excited to talk to you, because you've talked to hundreds of fans. So you may have like this amalgama of experiences or insight. And one of the things I'm interested in is also fan service. Like, fan service is considered very negative sometimes, and then sometimes it's not considered negative. Like, an example for me would be the fan service in The Force Awakens is maybe overdone. And I give that as a harsh maybe because I'm just bringing it up as an example where people have said there's a lot of fan service. But then the fan service in Star Trek Picard Season 3, I think is like, mwah, chef's kiss. Like, give me more of that fan service.
Yeah.
To you, what is an example of fan service that you've really appreciated and some that have gone too far within the Star Wars universe? I'm sorry, I kind of went to Star Trek, but that's just such... Season 3 was just so good.
And side note, this Sunday, I'm going to be on a roundtable talking about that specific topic, the fan service between the sequel trilogy and Picard Season 3. I know it's kind of a weird disconnect, but I think a lot of fans were expecting Picard level fan service when it came to the actors and characters from the Next Generation to have the same effect when it came to the sequel trilogy. There is no scene where the 3 original characters appear, and I think that is one of the biggest failings of the sequel trilogy that people really have a tough time, getting past.
Yeah.
So as they say in the old TV guide, please check your local listings on that one. But fan service is interesting because people say, I'm a fan, service me, show me what I like. And I think to a big degree, to a large degree, I think that is fine. I think that's a perfect way of thinking it. And it also goes to the fact that, do we feel that movies are product or art, which is another topic that I have discussed in the past ad nauseum, because I find it intriguing. I think, there are obviously certain aspects of movies that are art, but when it comes to blockbuster, summer, $2 billion box office type stuff, I think, they become product because they're designed to sell a ticket. I mean, look at The Force Awakens. A lot of people claim that it's kind of a soft reboot of the original movie. And, Disney just forked up almost $4.5 billion with a B dollars. And I'm sure the investors wanted their money back fast.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams has said kind of clandestinely that he wanted to go in a different direction when he was hired to do the first Star Wars after many years. But the suits were like, let's just play it safe and try to capture lightning in a bottle again, which is what he did with The Force Awakens. When it comes to fan service, I think and again, going back to the example you gave of Picard Season 3, I think if it makes sense to introduce said fan service, then I think it's going to be well received. The Picard show did it really great. I think all the characters came back from Next Generation. They each had a role to play. They had a function, and it just fit well in the story. And I think if you are going to tell a story that is replete with fan service, just make sure that it kind of checks off that box of, is it useful? Does it make sense? And really the last box that really should be checked is, will it be fan service? Because you never want to just put fan service just because. And I'll give you an example. I think the Walrus Man and the Snaggletooth character in the original Star Wars, when they were bothering Luke Skywalker in the cantina, they showed up on Jeddah in Rogue One. And a lot of people were like, oh, okay, that's cool, but why are they there? So that's kind of, I think that's kind of an example of fan service that may be approaching that line of it's not necessary. But yeah, I mean, different strokes for different folks, as they say.
So let's pivot back to more of a Star Wars focus. And I'm just curious, what is your favorite Star Wars memory?
From a movie or from an experience?
From an experience.
I think it would be the aforementioned, my trip from Chicago to Los Angeles to watch Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. I went with a friend of mine. We had it was almost kind of like a little pilgrimage for both of us. We are both Star Wars fans. We spent 2 nights and 3 days roaming the streets of Los Angeles. I remember going into a Taco Bell, and the promotion side was handled by PepsiCo, and Taco Bell and Pepsi were part of the Pepsi company. I remember going into a Taco Bell, getting a couple tacos, and the girls behind the counter that were taking the orders at the cash register, everybody had, Star Wars Episode 1 t-shirts with, Watto and all the characters and stuff like that. And I remember asking the young lady if she would take $50 for that t-shirt because I wanted it. And she's like, no. And I actually went up to $100 and she still said no.
Wow.
I really wanted that shirt because, again, it was the hype for a Star Wars movie. I think the hype for a movie in general has never been as high as it was for Episode 1. Love or hate the movie, I think prior to the movie being released, that hype train was on a roll and it was not stopping.
But tell me about being in line for Episode 1. What were some of did you meet anyone that you're still in touch with? What were some of the experiences like?
I don't think I was as social back then in 1999 as I am today. I think I had the experience. It was awesome to be able to see other fans. There was a media circus like every night because they came out to talk to us during the day and during the night. We would have to rush. There was a kind of a seedy hotel around Hollywood and Vine that we would have to use the bathroom. We would be afraid to go in there, but the experience of going to Los Angeles. And I remember, packing my clothes and thinking I was clever, that I was going to pack a Darth Vader tie. And I thought I was going to be so cool. But then, that was actually also my first experience in cosplay. I had never seen a real life stormtrooper walking down the street. So that was amazing for me. I said, I'm sitting here looking at my tie and I'm thinking I'm a little underdressed.
Yeah, I know that feeling when you think you're going to be the geekiest person there and you're almost like normal Joe.
Exactly. I remember at 3 a.m, one of the evenings, we were just kind of chilling, and there was a blue minivan that was, it reminded me kind of like the Scooby-Doo van, but there was a blue minivan that approached the line where we were at. And a whole bunch of Star Trek fans came out dressed in Star Trek uniforms, and they were all mocking us and yelling at us and flipping us the Spock hand, thing. I remember somebody yelling out, "Yoda was a puppet." So it was almost like a little a little street brawl. We all took out our switch knives. Slash lightsabers.
It was the Sharks versus the Jets in real life.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So what of all the stuff that's announced right now, what are you looking forward to the most in the Star Wars universe?
I am looking forward to Andor Season 2. I feel Andor is a Star Wars show that is top tier Star Wars. It's a Star Wars that is written marvelously. It's treated with a certain respect and a certain gravitas when it comes to the obviously the look and feel of it. There's obviously a difference in visuals and quality. The shows like the Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian, were shot using the volume technology, the stagecraft stuff, which is, from a technology aspect, it's great. It saves a lot of money. You can dial up a sunset and shoot all night if you need to. You don't have to really worry about an actual sunset. But having shown us the more traditional way of making these Star Wars movies on location with real sets, I think nothing will ever replace that. When it comes to the look and feel of a Star Wars, there's such a different feeling you get when you watch Andor. I'm looking forward to Andor Season 2. I'm also looking forward to the Skeleton Crew with Jude Law, And only because we don't know a lot about it. You know, I know a lot of set pictures were leaked from the Acolyte, and we've got Ahsoka pictures all over the place for the upcoming show, but we really haven't gotten a whole hell of a lot for Skeleton Crew.
No.
And to me, that's intriguing. I think, they're keeping it a secret. They're keeping it under wraps for some reason. I think fans will be pleasantly surprised at that.
I hope so. And what are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
This is something else that we talked about, especially because of, how different Andor was. There were no Jedi, there were no lightsabers. I think a lot of people was turned off about Andor because of those reasons. But I think for me, Star Wars has to have well-written characters and storylines. It has to have an element of magic. And not necessarily, the Force, but I think that magic has to come from other things like relationships, like environments, like world building. And I think those are the building blocks of what a Star Wars is. And, obviously also something that goes back to the original reason that George made these films is to inspire hope in a new generation.
Yeah. And, with Andor, oddly enough, bringing it back full circle back to the cantina, the one thing that I was surprised that Andor didn't have, not the Jedi, not the lightsabers, but places populated with aliens. It just, I can think of only a couple scenes where there were aliens, and I just found that really surprising. Now, I think it works in Andor because it's a very human story as well, told in a time when this kind of human story needs to be told, I think.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And, it is a vast galaxy. And, like you said, we did get some aliens.
And some very cool aliens.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, definitely looking forward to season 2.
Now, my final question for you, Ro. You go to Skywalker Ranch, and there at the gates, George Lucas greets you. What do you say to him?
I just give him a hug and say thank you.
Yeah.
It's really simple. And he's in Chicago. Him and his wife have a home here in Chicago. And not that I'm stalking him, but if I ever get the chance, that's definitely, I'll shake his hand and tell him thank you. George Lucas is a wonderful world builder. Obviously created Star Wars. Like I said, it's one of those things for me that I tried to learn as much as I could about not only his film, but the filmmaker. And he's impressive in that realm. Most impressive. There you go. Exactly. But absolutely. I think I was reading, when I was younger, him and Francis Ford Coppola started Zoetrope Studio together, and that inspired me to form a production company with my college buddy, which I still run today. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects of Star Wars and George Lucas that are part of my DNA. And I would just say, George, thanks.
That's great. Ro, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you? We did talk about some upcoming podcasts, which I can throw the links into the podcast notes here. But where can people follow you online?
Absolutely. So I'm mostly active on Twitter. So you can find the podcast channel, Scarif Podcast. And, we are available wherever you get your other favorite podcasts. Just tell your smart speaker to play the latest Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast, and we'll pop up.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it.
We're done. It's only 7:13. We can go another 2 hours.
Yeah, right. We might. You want to go another 2 hours? We can. Let's do it. Let me look at my questions.
But no, it's been such a blast. Thank you for reaching out. We have to get you on. We have to get you on a 5 questions for sure. So I
would love to do a 5 questions with you. Please. That'd be great.
We'll make that happen.
Again, Ro, thank you. May the Force be with you.
And also with you.
I've been trying to figure out how to get out of this show for like 19 episodes. And everyone goes, dude, may the Force be with you. I just did it. It didn't feel right. I got to tell you, it didn't fucking feel right.
That's hilarious. That's funny.
So that's what Star Wars means to Ro. You can find him on Twitter at Scarif Podcast and catch his show on YouTube at Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. All these links are in the podcast notes as well. Did Star Wars inspire you to look at movies in a different kind of way? Would you pay $100 for a Taco Bell Phantom Menace t-shirt? And adjusted for inflation, I think that's like $2,000 today. And what do you think is the best way to sign off after interviews? Get in on the conversation on Twitter or Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. If you're liking the show, please give a 5-star rating and review. And remember, the Force will be with you, always. Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.